Well, in the last 5 years or so, I went back to write more solo guitar music. Previously, I had written for 20 years, maybe a good number of concertos for guitar and orchestra, or concertos for guitar and other solo instrument and orchestra, and also chamber music with guitar with a concertante part, not guitar as an added instrument, but guitar with a very remarkable part. And then I got a bit tired with that
formation.
See, because there are so few chance of having it performed, because orchestras play only concerto di Aranjuez, a concerto by Castelnuovo Tedesco, to a lesser extent, Fantasia per un gentilombre, Villalobos, maybe San Ponce, but they are not opened to experiment new concertos for guitar. This is a very complicated situation. From one side, the guitarists tend not to risk adventures with proposing new pieces which are unknown to public. And from the other side, orchestras tend to play Aranjuez because they have it in their repertoire, so they don't need many rehearsals in order to perform it. It's just a matter of commercial, of business, no costs for rehearsals.
Efficiency.
It's a production.
Right.
Production. And so, after having written no less than 17 concertos,
wow,
I got a bit tired and I said to myself, God, it's enough. Instead, I receive quite often requests from guitarists to compose a piece for them, for each of them.
Solo, you mean?
Solo guitar,
yes.
Because in these cases, the featuring them in their recitals is easier and not complicated at all. So I wrote more for solo guitar and less for guitar and orchestra. Actually, I wrote just a concerto in these last 3-4 years for guitar and orchestra, and not for a normally tuned guitar, but for a chitarra battente, which is a popular instrument of southern Italy, Calabria.
What's the name again?
Chitarra battente.
Okay.
It is a guitar with 4 courses and
4 strings.
No, 4 courses, because each course is double string.
Okay.
And no, sorry, 5, not 4.
Is it tuned like a guitar?
In a way, the first string is E, the second is B, the third is G, like a normal guitar. The fourth and the fifth are, yes, D and A, but 1 octave higher. In other words, they are tuned more or less like Baroque guitar of Gaspar Sanz. So right. the lower note is a G, and this makes that guitar sounding a bit dangerously like a mandolin, no? And the soloist who asked me to write a concerto for him is a very brilliant guitarist, originary of Basilicata, who lives in Potenza, and he practiced a lot of popular music with that instrument, which is basically an instrument for popular music. But he wanted also to add a repertoire, classical repertoire. So I wrote a concertino for him, but I used only 10 instruments, a wind quintet, woods with woodwinds, and a string quintet with just one instrument for each stand. Otherwise, the sound would have been too heavy, no? And I like that piece. It works well, and it has been recorded recently. I will have a chance to listen to it, because mind, I write music by mind.
Yeah, you listen to it in your mind,
yes,
right?
And I have no idea of what it comes out. I have quite an idea of the notes and of what I imagine. Instead, I wrote several compositions for solo guitar.
So when you're composing for the guitar, I think you're mindful of the fingering.
Yes, of course.
Because you wouldn't write something which is impossible.
It's a virtual guitar.
But this different tuning, you just basically adjust it in your mind, right?
Yes. No, but also the fingering, of course. If you understand the character of the instrument, writing in a correct way, idiomatically, it's not difficult. You have just to check up what you do, but in your mind you can very easily. What I mean that I have not quite a definite idea is how it sounds actually on the air around,
right.
No?
The texture.
Yeah, it's impossible to handle. It's a new instrument. No? For mandolin, for instance, I wrote a concerto for Aria Vital, the virtuoso, the Israel virtuoso, and for his duo with the Polish guitarist Lukas Kropacewski. They made a duo, and I wrote a concerto for them, Jerusalem concerto. But the mandolin is familiar to me. While even in the fingering is like a violin.
Yeah. You wrote a piece for me also with mandolin,
it's not difficult.
Fantastic.
Whilst the chitarra battente is much more tricky.
Yeah,
I would say.
I can imagine. What about other instruments? Because you also wrote for me for oboe, flute, and all these things. There you don't have to be concerned so much about fingering, right?
No, fingering
Because
on those instruments, no, it's out of question.
Yeah.
Not even a conductor can finger, I don't know, a cello part. Unless he was a cellist when he was...
And it's not so important as guitar, because guitar is polyphonic. The fingering is much more important.
Writing for orchestra is a complicated matter. There are many things that you should do, and even more things that you shouldn't do at all. And so,
give me an example.
Many examples. If you have a horn, a French horn, doing a voice, and you need a second voice, and you give that second voice to a bassoon, the bassoon will disappear. Nobody will listen to it.
I see.
If you want a string instrument, a bow instrument, a violin, making a trill, you have to avoid an open string in the trill, otherwise it will come out a ridiculous effect. So you have also to a lot of it's a keyboard, no?
It's a what, sorry?
A keyboard. You have to know it from your compositional background, of course.
Are the modern digital tools helpful with this regard at all? Like Finale? What do you compose with these days in terms of software? Do you use Finale or what do you use?
Sibelius.
Sibelius. Right.
See?
Is that helpful in some ways? Does it give you tips?
No,
and so on?
it is very helpful in the material job. I mean, you write a phrase, you write 16 measures. Then you think you could do then better. And what do? With Sibelius, you can change directly with no problem. Or you can add another file and having 2 versions, 3 versions.
Right.
All the work of corrections is much easier and quicker. So if, but it doesn't add an inch to your musical mind. I mean, if you can write correctly either a novel or a commercial letter or a curriculum, it's word cannot help you.
Exactly. That's correct. Yeah. So you were saying about the composition.
For solo guitar I have written pieces which I like not because I believe they are great. I like them in the sense that they reflect faithfully what I feel in that time, in that moment. So my music of these years is much different from the music I wrote 20 years ago.
In fact, I was going to ask you about that.
I was another man. A work is successful or failed depending not from whether it receives a popularity or not, but from whether it is faithful to the mind, to the soul of the composer when he writes it. So for me, they are successful because if they aren't, I throw them in the basket.
I have to add that to your file of quotes. I have this huge file of quotes, things that you've said, your one-liners, which I've collected over the years.
Yes.
Because you're a philosopher, of course. And also, I think, you have a great mind, but what I'm always impressed by talking with Italian speakers, I think this language itself is so powerful because you think with the language,
Well, honestly, I can speak correctly only Italian. My speaking English or Spanish or French is not faithful to me because my vocabulary is too limited. But when I speak Italian, no, I am at home.
I know, but what I mean is that some of the concepts, sometimes I think that maybe you're translating because you think your original thinking is in
Italian, of course.
And those concepts come across in English very profoundly. It's similar with Persian also,
But by chance, because I never think in English.
You mentioned about tried and tested things. There are some guitarists who always play the same repertoire in concert. I'm talking about famous guitarists because they're like a war horse. People like it. Like Leyenda, Asturias, for example.
I can understand them because they have to earn bread and butter from their concerts. And of course, they are not on the field, on the battlefield, for promoting new music or taking adventurous steps. They are like cooks. They have to serve to their customers what they want, and I can understand them. But between a composer who is following a certain path, with an idea, with something which is different, because a composer worthy of this name, and interpreters, there is not a direct, strong connection. Segovia had a marvelous connection with Ponce, a good connection with Castelnuovo Tedesco, though not marvelous, because there were some difficult points, some difficult moments in their friendship and cooperation. But nowadays it is much more difficult, much more difficult to have a direct connection with an interpreter. I have a few ones, luckily. Why? Because they discovered in my music what they needed for themselves. It's not coincidental. I play guitar in this way, my ideal sound is like that. That atmosphere I want to create.
Like Cristiano
or Giulio, Alberto Mesirca, Christian Saggese, there are a good number nowadays. They act for themselves. I mean, they take the work because the work offered to them, my work offered to them a chance for expressing something which is peculiar within themselves, their mind, and so on.
Of course.
It's not a cooperation, and it happens more easily. This connection between a guitarist and the music of, let me say, 50 years ago, because it is already more familiar to everybody. It is what I commented about Concerto de Aranjuez. Like, Concerto de Aranjuez is, everybody knows it. So,
even in pop music.
Another problem with interpreters is that in our schools, music schools, conservatories, academies, they are educated, they are instructed for becoming virtuoso. They have very good technique.
Race horses.
Yes, but they are not educated for understanding music. They do not learn how to write music. And so it is very difficult for them to discriminate good music from commercial music. They have no criteria for understanding what is really original, what is really strong, and what is in whatever. When a baby goes to, a child goes to the primary school, he is educated to read, but also to write. And this process will go on for many years without assuming that he will become a writer or a journalist, a reporter. No? Just for having a use, a command of the language. So, in Italy we have a lot of graduated, people who are graduated in literature, and none of them, few of them are writers. And on the other side, we have our best writers in the last centuries who were not graduated in the universities. So, but those who have learned, who have taken a doctorate in Italian literature, they can discriminate a good writer from the postman. No, you know?
Yeah, I understand.
Guitarists and all the other category of players are not educated to write music. This is a matter of the composers. No, it's a matter of viewers. Because if you do not understand that music is a language with rules and so on, you can't figure out what is really a piece. So you play it on your keyboard, on your instrument. Oh, I like this, but this is for restaurant. This is not a judgment. This is not an informed opinion. This is just a reaction from belly. I am convinced that those the boys and the girls who go to study music, they should learn for 5, 6 years music in general, reading, writing, and understanding.
Appreciation.
Understanding. Then they are virtuosos, they are composers, they are singers, they are conductors, okay. Then they have a specific path to follow, but not one studies for 12 years in a conservatory in Italy, and at the end he is a pianist, an organ, a violinist, whatever, and at the end he is not capable of composing an academic piece of 32 meters.
I understand what you mean. Yeah, that seems odd. Yeah.
This, of course, when they take a piece of music, they don't know what it is. Whether it is original or if it is a repetition for the 20th time of a piece already written by whom. And all of this makes the situation fragile.
Right. This brings up something else in my mind, but I don't know if I'm correct in the way I'm thinking. It seems to me that I've taken some courses in the conservatory, but never went through the whole program because I had to study other things formally. But within the conservatory, which I've been to many times, and I see people who go through it, they go through a lot of pain, they go through a lot of competition, which I know your opinion on the topic. But also, I correct me if I'm wrong, they are somewhat forced or obliged to learn pieces that they don't necessarily like. And maybe after some time, then they lose.
Maybe,
yeah.
or may not be. But because this is a part of the problem, of course.
And now, just another thing, earlier you were saying about how your music is close to your heart. You're one of the greatest composers of all time, in my opinion. Bach, for example, who was a great composer, he wrote many pieces. Do you think that all of those pieces were close to his heart?
Surely. In the case of Bach, we have a special case. He was always above the problem. Was above the problem. He had such an illumination from
the universe,
heavens, that he could do. He is always himself. There is even the smallest, the little invention, two-voice invention, is Bach. He's always himself. There is something which is.
What about other composers? Do you think they wrote things that they didn't like because they had to?
Yes, indeed, surely.
But you're not in that. You've not been in that position, right?
Well,
pretty much most things you've written, you've liked it.
Yes, but sometimes I wrote a piece just for pleasing a friend. When I wrote the Canzoni dimenticate for you, or when for instance. I was in my childhood. I had a friend of my age, and we used to read those cartoons, no, with those heroes. When we met 30 years later, 35 years later, he said to me, "Do you recall or do you?" And so we were in very good terms of friendship. I wrote a suite of 5 movements for guitar solo, whose title was Appaloosa, the name of the horse race, or the horse race, and with titles which are Longhorn, Ghosts, Peacemaker 45, The Riders in the Sky, and so on. No?
So you write sometimes for fun?
Yes, he was also an amateur movie maker. To write the music, I mean, to write the music for a movie he could do upon those characters which we were so fond of when we were children.
Right, right. So you mentioned Canzoni dimenticate. So I called you one day after a dream I had that this was played with cello and guitar, and you said, let me think about it. And a few days later you called me up and you said you had this whole suite written, came from universe. How did you think about, because you dedicated each piece, well, you dedicated the whole suite to me, thank you so much, but each piece was in memory of one of the great composers of the past.
Great
or not so famous.
Not so great, but well, art can derivate from nature, landscapes, or from people, actual real people, or can derivate also from art. I observe a beautiful painting, or I read a deep, nice book, or I attend a strong theatrical play, or whatever, or I listen to a piece of music. And this is a word. And I think of that word exactly as I could think of a landscape if I were a painter. No, it is the starting point for giving a sort of for pushing forward my mind. And then, of course, it's not an imitation. I am not trying to imitate.
I understand.
I would never do that.
But did you actually listen to works or look at music from those people before you write each of those pieces? Sunset at the Alhambra, for example.
Sunset at the Alhambra is a musical reflection, an amusement about a peculiar way of making music. It was called, in the second half of 18th century in Spain, there was a romantic fashion. It was a derivation of romantic art, which was called Alhambrismo. No, the Alhambra is a magnificent building,
Granada,
and yes, and it is in a way a symbol, no, of the Islam in Spain, in Europe, and a lot of Spanish and also French composers were not Andalusian, let alone Arabian, felt inspired, but that exotistic
Recuerdos de la Alhambra.
Recuerdos de la Alhambra was written by a man who lived in Barcelona, and and he visited Alhambra not differently from how, I don't know what Georges Bizet did visiting Andalusia with Carmen. I mean, they were bourgeois of the second half of 18th century who felt a sort of disease of oppression because of the rising spleen of the big town, no? And they tended to escape from them and to meet fantastic works. Alhambrismo was one of the... And so I wrote in the style of Thomas Breton.
I will play that on this. Beautiful.
This is music, is voluntarily deliberated music of second rate, because déjà entendu, already listened to, in the way of, this is music for a movie, yes, it would be okay for a movie.
And then you wrote that cello piece, The Legend,
which
was just incredible. And you had this really high...
Well, I can write melodies. It doesn't work today, it's not very... But it's a gift, no? There are great composers who were not gifted for melody. I am not a great composer, but I am gifted for melody.
You are a great composer.
I can write melodies.
You were more true to your values and certain things
Yes.
than glory.
Yes.
You could have become a great conductor of a great famous orchestra if you wanted
I
to.
am not for
But
that.
you're not interested in that.
I am not for that. It would be a lie. I would lie if doing that, even if I can. No? When I was a baby, quite casually, incidentally, I discovered that I was very good with shooting. No, like, but I never killed birds or so on. But casually it happened. I wasn't. I couldn't fail one single
Target.
target. And no. I stopped at that immediately. Gifts are some sort of added elements, and it is left up to us to decide whether to make a use of them or not.
Right. When we met long time ago, when I first moved to Europe, you were writing some melancholic music. You referred to your state of mind at the time,
Yes.
like an angel with a broken wing.
Yeah, yes.
Can you just elaborate?
Melancholy by Dürer.
If I remember correctly.
The angel who can't fly.
Exactly.
See, this was Melancholy in the representation of Dürer engraving, marvelous. Melancholia ur first. It's marvelous. And you see this angel which is sitting down with, and he has around him, he has all the elements for investigating and understanding the universe, mathematic, alchemic, so on, magic, but he cannot fly. This is the condition of mankind. Yes.
Yeah, and to me the impression that I had, correct me if I'm wrong, was that that's how you felt. Now years later, that's how I feel myself. I feel so strange in this stupid world, you know. And I felt, I mean, my impression was that you also felt in a way that, I don't know how to describe it, but out of this world in some ways, that you're here with all this talent. I don't know, I cannot actually put it in the right words.
I was well in this world when I was a baby.
Is it one more time?
When I was a baby, a child, up to 9 years, I couldn't perceive a separation from things. I could stay one whole afternoon, in my garden, near to a small river, and stay there.
Absorbed.
For hours without, I was totally. So when life knocked at my door, what I understood is that my masterpiece, if any, will be mainly not to change, to remain what I am now. When somebody asks me about how old I am, I used to answer the truth. Nowadays I am 77 and a half, but in my mind I think, no, I am 12. Because I never surpassed that level of, how to say, growth. I didn't want to grow up to become a member of different clubs, according to politics, nationality, sexuality, religion, and all of these. No.
Tribes, exactly. And I remember this is a tip to your music students as well, is that if the child inside you is gone, you're finished.
You can be a machine for producing notes, but it will just a brilliant way of showing the nothing you are in yourself. It happened one time, rather renowned young teenager came to me. Those kind of people which happens to meet sometimes in master class, they do not come to the master class, to your master class, because they are interested to learn something from you or from fellows. Or they come just because they want to add a name more of professors, famous professors in the list of that. And because they tend to use the time they have during the master class for a show, no? For demonstrating how proficient or good, how superior they are. And
which is all the work of the ego, the self.
see an immense ego.
What did you say?
An immense ego,
Yeah.
enormous ego. And that teenager came and at the end I say, okay. They say, huh? Have you nothing to tell to me? Well, I have good news. All the notes are there. And I have very good, less good news. None of these many notes has the slightest, the minimum significance.
Wow.
Completely. So,
Thank you
in a way,
for being so honest.
I said, it would be better if you hadn't such a brilliant technique. Because one, with listening to you, could imagine, well, he is not yet capable of expressing what he has inside. But when the glass is so limpid, is so clean, there is no issue. It's the most direct way of showing the desert which you have inside. The same piece of wood.
Exactly. And you know what's happening is so contrary to that, because in guitar, you remember what happened to me on the guitar news group with the jealous people, all these things, and all the comparison, the jealousy, not just to me, but there's a lot of brutality in this area because of competition, because of ego. Me, I am so glorious,
Oh, okay.
And Krishnamurti used to say, where the self is, beauty is not.
Yes.
Love is not.
It's,
because those things, it's the absence of that self.
No, Jesus Christ saying that.
Exactly.
Muhammad said that.
First or second time I came to you, you helped me a lot with the guitar playing. You asked me to play louder and stronger and bring the sound out. That was a huge help, so thank you so much for that. And I tell that to my students these days, because a lot of new students, they play so soft, but you really need to bring the sound out of this guitar, right?
Well, guitar is already a soft, thin instrument.
Exactly.
If you have something to offer to your listeners, you have to put it on first row, otherwise
Exactly.
Look what a beautiful cloud.
Wow.
This is a magnificent cloud.
So
how many colors are in that cloud?
Yeah.
Next life, I will be a painter. In a time when my, imagination, my inspiration as a composer was flat, I spent time with doing pastels. And I did a lot of them, but I have no one. I gifted all of them to my students who unfortunately for me, have guarded them. It would be much better if they had thrown them to fire.
Now, what about these? Tell me about these, please. These are so wonderful.
Well, this is energy which is in the nature.
Yeah.
No?
Whose work are these?
Gastone Cecconello. He has my same age. We are fellows from when we were young, and he's a very good painter. Yes.
Wow, fantastic. Where is he from?
Originally from Vercelli.
So I'm just curious a little bit about your association with Segovia. You knew him personally, obviously.
We met 3 or 4 times, no more. I wasn't a follower of his, and I didn't agree with what he said, but I studied his art as deeply as possible because he was really great, he was a genius. And after his death, I was called by his heirs, his wife and his son, to take care of his heritage, and I did. I published all the significant music he had in his archive, and without having played it, and because he had no time for learning new music. Then I wrote his biography, and recently I took care of publishing in Italy and in Italian the 120 letters he wrote to Mario Castelnuovo. These talk written in a friendly approach. They are significant documents of guitar music history.
Wow, it's only published in Italian, right?
Yes.
As far as I remember.
I have been entrusted with that work by an Italian publisher, yes.
What did you not agree with him? You said you didn't agree with what he said or some of what he said.
Well, I didn't agree with the fact that he considered music according to how it worked for him, not for its intrinsic qualities. So he played music of a certain quality, of course, he never went down. And he didn't play music of a higher value among those pieces written for him, because they didn't suit his sound, you know. And here we come to what I said before, with a concert player chose not the music for itself, but for how it works for them.
Right. How do you characterize the change of your music from 20 years ago? You mentioned that obviously because you're a different person, people grow, people change.
It became clearer, less dark, became a bit more, how to say, not joyful, no, but transparent. And I would say it recalls of my first years of life more than the music I wrote before.
I see. I remember listening to some of your music. You know, there's a YouTube video of a study they did where it shows that when you listen to music, your brain just gets very active. When you play an instrument, it gets incredibly active. It's fireworks. So music has this incredible impact on the brain. And I remember when I listen to some of your music, it feels like having a brain surgery. And it takes me to a realm of unknown.
Well, a composer is just a radio station. It receives in an encrypted language and
decrypted. Do you want to tell me a little bit about any of them?
It will take 2 days. They are all historical instruments.